everyone. My name is Maya Reutman, and I'm with the Dana Center for Neuroscience and Society. I'm a first-year medical student at Loyola Chicago and a research assistant in Dr. Shen's lab at Harvard Medical School. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Octavio Choi, who is an interventional and forensic neuropsychiatrist at Stanford. He received his MD PhD at UC San Diego as part of NIH's Medical Scientist Training Program, and he received his PhD in neuroscience for the work done at the Salk Institute in Neural Development. Dr. Choi is the founding director of Stanford's Forensic Psychiatry Fellowship Program, which is the first neurolaw-focused program in the world. He specializes in neurolaw, an emerging interdisciplinary field, and he is also an active educator, providing seminars to students, attorneys, judges, neuroscientists, and clinicians on the importance and relevance of neuroscience and the law. Dr. Choi is also the founding director of the Stanford Neuroforensics Accelerator, whose core mission is to accelerate the transformation of basic neuroscience research into actionable insights for reliable legal decision-making. Welcome, Dr. Choi, and thank you very much for being here. So we'll ask a couple of questions about your career today. And so what was the career path that led you to begin working at this intersection of neuroscience and psychiatry and the law? And just tell me a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it was a long and winding path. So I don't know if I can summarize it just in a few sentences. But essentially, I've been interested in neuroscience for a very long time, dating back to high school. Oliver Sacks was one of my favorite writers, and I kind of stumbled across some of his books. And I think The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat is the first one I read, and I just was blown away by the brain and all that it can do and all the complex. And when I did my undergraduate at Stanford, and we have a weird major called symbolic systems, which is like this unholy combination of computer science and neuroscience and philosophy and linguistics, which I absolutely loved. And so continuing my love for neuroscience. And then I did an MD PhD with my PhD primarily in neuroscience. And I thought I'd go into basic research, but it just turned out that wasn't my cup of tea. So I focused mostly on my clinical work. I ended up doing a psychiatry residency after medical school, and then a forensic psychiatry fellowship. But for a long time, I was looking for a way to integrate more neuroscience into my work life. And so it took a while, but I finally found the field of interventional psychiatry, which is mostly focused on neuromodulation to treat illnesses like depression and obsessive compulsive disorder. And then I also discovered that there's this whole world of neuroscience being used in the courtroom that really kind of piqued my interest. And so I did my forensic psychiatry fellowship so I can become an expert to testify in courtroom settings, and leveraging my neuroscience background, I kind of specialize in neurolaw cases.
That's incredible. And yeah, that interdisciplinary work between neuroscience and law and is just such an increasing field. And for students who may be interested in pursuing a career at that intersection, can you tell us a little bit more about what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so I imagine a lot of the people that you talk to who are neurolaw experts are coming from more the law side. So it's like there's a lot of law people, law professors and such, and that's one fantastic path to become involved in neurolaw. And I'm more coming at it from the neuro side and the medical neuro side as well. So day to day, I do a lot of different things, which is how I like it. So I do clinical work in a TMS clinic, that's transcranial magnetic stimulation, that uses focal neurostimulation to treat depression. It's the best treatment for depression. Anyone with depression, or you should have them look into TMS. It's also covered by insurance. I do a lot of teaching for the fellowship, going over the various cases I'm involved in, and I do forensic work. And the forensic work, there's lots of different kinds of neuro cases. From the criminal side, kind of a classic one might be an offender who commits some sort of offense and is later found to have a brain tumor. And so, I've done several insanity evaluations. Was this person criminally responsible for their acts, given the fact that they had this brain tumor in their brain? And that really gets at so much of the heart of moral reasoning and philosophy, and how culpable someone is for their acts, We know the brain is the organ that kind of, that results in behavior, and if there's something wrong with that organ, changes your behavior, how responsible should you be? I find all those criminal law questions super interesting. And my mentor, Stephen Morris, is one who really kind of encouraged my passion in that area. On the civil side, a lot of the cases tend to be brain injury cases where someone might be at a construction site and have a slip and fall, and they hit their head, and they have some sort of extended symptoms from that. I had an interesting case where, there was a minister, and I'm going to change various details to make it anonymous, but there was a minister who had a lifelong, of law-abiding, very kind of high social functioning in his life, and he slipped and fell off his ladder. And about a year and a half later, and then his behaviors changed. And a year and a half later, he started to act very oddly. He wrote threatening letters to a competing church, something that he would never have done in his normal life. But it turns out the injury that he sustained, you can see this in neuroimaging, is in a part of the brain that's really important for moral reasoning. This is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that was removed by the tapping rod in Phineas Gage, so he kind of became a psychopath overnight. But that area of the brain is really important for social reasoning, for moral reasoning, and so with this part of this brain damage, his moral reasoning kind of came off, like his moral compass kind of shifted, and so those kind of cases are super interesting. Yeah, and there's lots more I can talk about. Neuroimaging is a really, really hot area, both in medicine as well as in the courtroom. And there's lots of new kind of neuroimaging modalities that are coming down the line. So I'm involved in a lot of Dover level hearings where, one side wants to admit this kind of novel neuroscience evidence for a trial. The other side wants to, not admit it, and they have a Dover hearing where the judge oversees. And I give opinions whether I think any given technology is mature enough for use in the courtroom. And I find those very interesting cases as well.
Yeah, I think that's really a pressing question, especially nowadays with AI and neurotechnology and sort of the rise of implantable brain-computer interfaces, and what would that mean in terms of who's responsible? Is it the technology? Is it who's creating the technology? So yeah, very interesting ethical questions as well.
Yeah, so you're raising a lot of the privacy issues. So, as we get more implantables that are recording things about even Fitbits that just record heart rate and, basic things, that has been used by detectives to track when a certain crime occurred, like when the heart rate is spiking, it gives corroboratory evidence. And, Francis Shen has written a lot about privacy with brain scans. And, our brain scans protected by the Fourth and Fifth Amendments from search and seizure, and testamentary, the Fifth Amendment's protecting you against self-incrimination. These are all super interesting questions.
Very fascinating. And Dr. Choi, I'm wondering, so for students like myself who are in medicine, who, really are interested in operating at that, again, intersection and interdisciplinary teams with law and neuroscience and medicine, what advice would you give to students like myself?
I think the path I took is a really good path. Go to medical school, and then so I'm a psychiatrist. I did a psychiatry residency after medical school, and then I did a 1-year forensic psychiatry fellowship. That will position you really well to testify in courtroom cases that involve mental states. And so that's why when you think about there are so many forensic psychiatrists compared to forensic liver doctors or forensic ophthalmologists, or name your other medical field. There's a few, there's malpractice cases where you need kind of, people from that field to opine on standard of care. But, what courts really care about are mental states and brain capacities. And when you think about the doctors who really are experts in assessing mental states, it's psychiatrists. Neurologists are also involved, especially with assessing brain capacities, but the training for neurology is quite different, as you're probably aware. It's it might be changing now, but it's very mechanistic. It's very like, here's the circuit, here's how, here's the synapse, and this is where it crosses, and that's all fascinating from a mechanistic standpoint. But it kind of sheds little light on mental states, which is really what the courts are interested in. So being a psychiatrist and a forensic psychiatrist puts you in situations where they will want your opinion about whether there's neuroscience or not. They'll want your opinion about assessing someone's mental states or capacities. And that's what a insanity evaluation is about. It's just assessing someone's capacities for moral reasoning and for impulse control at the time of the crime, at the time of the offense, and establishing this retrospective mental state. So psychiatrists are kind of like the doctors that do that. And being a forensic psychiatrist, gives you the training to testify in courts. And having neuroscience background, either through a PhD is a long path to do it, but you can also get a master's degree or simply take a lot of extra outside the your residency training and neuro things. Are all fine ways to go. A neuropsychiatry fellowship is a great thing to stack on to. So 1 year neuropsychiatry fellowship followed by a 1 year forensic psychiatry fellowship would position you really well to opine on neuroscience in the courtrooms.
Yes, I'm taking notes for sure. I'm
Yeah,
very
yeah, it's super
interested.
interesting. And
Yes.
no matter what, the good thing about forensics is no matter what area of medicine you're in, forensics can be that other dimension, like
Yeah.
it plays well with everything. It just gives you depth in whatever else that you're doing.
That's fantastic. And to wrap up our session today, what are some readings, films, resources that you usually recommend your students to go to when they want to learn more about the field or just neuroscience and
Yeah.
neurolaw in general?
Yeah, it's still a really new field. I mean, anything written by Francis Shen is worth reading. He has a law and neuroscience casebook that's really great. If your school offers a law and neuroscience class, either at the undergraduate level or even at the graduate level, if you're an undergrad, you can often you just ask the professor if you can join in. It's still an emergent field, so it's a bit piecemeal where to get things. I mean, my path was I just stumbled across really interesting kind of articles and TED Talks and things like that. James Fallon, that's a really not Jimmy Fallon, the talk show host. There's a neuroscientist named James Fallon who just check out his TED Talk. He's a neuroscience researcher who researches psychopathy and how psychopathic brains are different. And the punchline is he scanned his own brain. And it turns out he has a psychopathic brain. And so there's lots of really interesting things that kind of flow from that realization, like, oh, but he's not a criminal, he's a neuroscience researcher. But so brain scans are not destiny, but they are informative in various ways. And so that's a great little story to kind of for people to want to explore. Yeah, the MacArthur Law and Neuroscience Network has a great website that has great resources. Harvard CLBB, Center for Law, Biology, and I'm sorry, I'm going to screw up the acronym, but CLBB, Center for Law, Behavior, and Brain, or Brain and Behavior. That's a great resource. They write lots of white papers and kind of publish a newsletter that's really interesting. But those are all great ways to. And then once you get started there, you'll kind of find your own. You can quickly go down a million different rabbit holes and enjoy those rabbit holes. That's what's like. It's important to feed your passion and just kind of really just read things because you find them super interesting. You can't stop reading them, and you can develop a career like that.
Absolutely. I need that on a t-shirt. Enjoy the rabbit holes.
That's right.
For sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Choi. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for speaking with the Dana Career Network of Neuroscience and Society.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing.